Hi there, Mike Rankin coming to you as part of the Lockdown 2020 Affinity Creative Sessions. Thanks for joining me. In this movie, we're going to take a look at how to take a layout that was built in InDesign and bring it into Affinity Publisher, make some changes, and then output a new version. And before we get started, I'll just say a little bit about myself. My name is Mike Rankin. I'm the editor-in-chief at CreativePro Networks, which means I'm responsible for the content on CreativePro.com, InDesignSecrets.com, and InDesign Magazine. I'm also an instructor at LinkedIn Learning, where I have lots of video courses, including Affinity Publisher Essential Training. And earlier in my career, I worked for many years in book publishing production. I was an illustrator. I worked in pre-press and automation and lots of other things. And I'm a really big fan of Affinity Publisher, and I can't wait to show you some really cool stuff that you can do with it. So to get started, let's take a look at the file we're going to work with. So here's our file. It's an annual report, but it really could be any kind of short booklet. It's 10 pages long in PDF format. It's US letter size and starts with a cover here. And the interior spreads have recurring elements like this running header and the page numbers. We have images that span across the spread, table of contents here. We have lots of text with various kinds of formatting, body text, sidebars, headings. We have graphical elements. Silhouetted photo of our CEO here. And we have some charts and graphs and a table. And on the back cover, we have a hyperlink to our fictional company's webpage. So you could pretty much remake this entire layout pixel for pixel using Affinity Publisher, but you don't have to if you have this PDF file, because Publisher can actually open this PDF file directly and convert all these page items into editable elements, and you can work with them right there. And that can be a really great thing if you have a very tight deadline and you just need to make a few changes to get the new version out. And that's also something that Adobe InDesign cannot do, so it's a really cool feature. But it wouldn't take you very long to discover some challenges if you did have to make a lot of major changes to the file. So let's switch over to Publisher and open this PDF file and see what we get. So I'll just choose File Open. And here's the PDF, and I'll open it. So in the PDF options dialog box, I can choose which pages to bring here into Publisher. I can choose resolution and color space. I'm just going to leave everything at the defaults and click Open. Publisher loads the document, and it tells me that it assigned a CMYK profile. That's fine. And sure enough, I can just start double-clicking in here and editing these text frames. So I'll update the date. And this is really cool, just to be able to make these tweaks and output a new version. But it wouldn't take long to discover some things that were harder to work with. First of all, I just noticed right here in the Master Pages panel that there are no master pages. So if I wanted to make a change that occurred throughout the document, I can no longer use a master page to do that. And it kind of makes sense because the master pages obviously weren't carried through in the PDF file, so Publisher would have no way to know what was on them. As I scroll down further, I can see that I don't have my facing pages spreads anymore. That's actually a thing that's really easy to fix. If I have nothing selected and I have the Move tool, I can just go up here to Document Setup, click on that, and in the Layout tab here, I'll just turn facing pages on. I'll align them horizontally. I'll start on the right-hand side because we had that cover, and click OK. And now my spreads are all reunited, and that looks really good. But if I go back up here, I can start to see some of the things that are hard to work with. So we have, the running header that belonged on the master page is now just a local document item, and so is the page number over here. The images that span the spread are in two separate picture boxes here. Okay, so they've been chopped up, so I'd have to find a way to reunite them. And they're also not linked to the original image files that were linked to from InDesign. So if I go to Document Resource Manager, I can see that they're all embedded at this point. And these are just copies of the image files. So they've all been named for the PDF file. So it's Annual Report 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. If I did have access to the original linked images, I could use the replace feature here to link back to them. The table of contents is no longer a dynamic table of contents. This is just static text. So if the titles or the page numbers changed, I'm going to have to manually update that here. On this spread, I have a lot of the text formatting. In fact, it looks exactly like it did in the PDF file, but it would be difficult to bring in new text and format it like this, because if I look over in the text styles, I have no paragraph and character styles to work with. Again, that's just not information that's preserved inside the PDF file. And there are some layout things as well, like this frame is kind of weird here. The title and the sidebar got mushed in together in the PDF file. Likewise, if I needed to change the color, if we wanted to use something other than this red throughout the document, I don't have any swatches to work with. So there's no document palette here with global colors that I can just change once and have that red change to something else throughout the document. So that's going to be a challenge. As I scroll down, I can see what looks like a table is actually just a bunch of separate text frames. So that's going to be hard to work with if I have to add rows and columns and make major changes there. And on the last page, I don't have a live hyperlink to the company anymore. So these are all things that I'll get better results with if I have access to the IDML file, the InDesign markup language file that you can export from Adobe InDesign. So if you don't have access to InDesign, the third-party tool that you can use is called IDMarks from marksware.com. I'm going to switch over to that. And you can purchase this as part of a subscription or just a one-off purchase if you don't want to get involved with subscription software. And I can use IDMarks to open an InDesign file even if I don't have a Creative Cloud subscription. And then I can export out the IDML to open in Publisher. So let's do that. I'll click Open. Here's the INDD, the InDesign file, and I'll open that. It opens here in IDMarks. I get page previews so I can see what I'm working with. I get lots of document information here. I can actually print the InDesign file directly from IDMarks. And over on the top left, I have this export button where I can see all the different file formats that I can export from this original InDesign source document. So PDF and all these image formats. If I just wanted to extract the text and use that for a different purpose, I have the Stories button here, and I can choose the format for the text. But in this case, I want the whole document. So I'm going to cancel out. And I'm going to use the Publisher button right here. So when I click this, IDMarks is going to create an IDML file from the InDesign file and then open it immediately in Publisher for me to start working with. And it's loading, and there it is. And I can tell just pretty much right away that I have lots more stuff to work with here. You know, I have some margins and column guides going on here. I can see from the different color edges of my text frames that the layer information was preserved from the InDesign file, and I can confirm that by going over to the Layers panel. And I can see that with my master page content at the bottom, just like I would want it to be. And in fact, let's go over to the master page right now and update it. So the first thing I want to do is update this date on the top right. So we'll go 2020, whoops, 21. And I have my dynamic page numbers, which is good, but I'd actually like to move them up. I don't like how they're down here in the middle of the page, so I'm going to align them at the top by selecting and then using the align controls here to align vertically to the top of the page. That's looking good. And now there's a little bit of weirdness going on with the column guides here. So they're not exactly aligned correctly. They're a little bit off on the right-hand page, and they're just missing altogether from the left-hand page. I'm not exactly sure why this happened. I think it might have to do with the fact that they weren't proper column guides in the original InDesign file. They were just drawn as ruler guides. Okay, so let's get rid of these and make them actual proper column guides here in Publisher. So we'll go View, Guides Manager, and I'll click the button to remove all guides, get rid of these ones, and to make real column guides, I'll go over here. I want 6 columns separated by a gutter of 14 points, and I like the outline style, so I'll stick with that. And click Close, and that's looking like a good master page. So we'll go back to the first page. Let's update this date. 2020, 21. Go to the next spread. And I can select this placed image. It now spans the spread properly, just like it did in InDesign. And I can confirm that it's still linked to the original image file by going to the Resource Manager. And there it is, clouds.jpg. All my images are linked, not embedded. Very cool. The table of contents is just static information right now. That's understandable because it couldn't preserve the dynamic nature of that in the coming over from InDesign, but we can fix this easily enough. We'll do that a little bit later on. Let's see, what else can we do here? Go to the next spread. Yes. All right. So in this spread, I want to show you one of my favorite features of working with the Affinity products, and that's the Studio Link feature. With Studio Link, I can access the tools in the other programs like Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo right here in the context of my Affinity Publisher layout. So that can help me work on Brad here, our CEO. I want to retouch Brad's photo here. And the reason I do is because for the new version of our annual report, let's say Brad's no longer sporting the facial hair here, but we didn't have time to hire a photographer and do a new headshot. But he wants to look the way that he does now. So we need to get rid of this facial hair. I don't have a tool for that in Publisher, but I do have a perfect tool for that in Affinity Photo. And I can access it with Studio Link just by selecting the photo here and going up to the button on the top left and switching to the photo persona. So I'll switch to photo persona, and immediately all my tools are changed, so I now see the Affinity Photo tools, including the tool for removing the facial hair here. I'm going to use the healing brush. So I'll make sure my settings look like what I want. I'm going to hold Option or Alt and then click on a patch of skin down here. The assistant tells me it had to rasterize the layer so I can actually change the pixels on the layer, and thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted. And we'll just drag over and give him a shave. And that looks pretty good. So that's really amazing, just to be able to make that kind of photo modification in the context of the layout. I didn't have to switch applications, I didn't have to save files, update links, so on and so forth. So cool. And then when I just want to switch back and see my Publisher tools, I just click up here to switch back to the Publisher persona. And it actually gets even cooler than that. If I go down to the History panel down in the bottom right, I can go forward and backward throughout the history and see changes that I made in both personas. So changes that I made to the layout with the Publisher tools and the change I made to the photo here using the Affinity Photo tools. So that's really cool. Another thing I'd like to do while I'm here is I want to change the color that's used throughout the document. So I want to change from this red to something else. If I go to Swatches, I have this document palette that was brought over from InDesign, and I have global swatches. And I can tell that they're global because they have these little white triangles in the bottom left corner. So because it's a global swatch, I can change it once here, and it will cascade throughout the entire document. So let's switch from red to something else. I'll just double click to change the main color, and I can use any of Publisher's color controls to change that. So I'll just use these sliders, and we can switch it to maybe a green or a blue. That blue looks kind of cool to me, maybe about there. And you can see it change throughout the document thanks to the global swatch. Likewise, we can also make wholesale changes to the text formatting by using the paragraph and character styles. Now, the designer who built this file in Adobe InDesign leveraged the Based On feature there, which allows you to base paragraph and character styles on a parent style so that you can just make a change to the parent style and see that change cascade throughout the text formatting in the entire document in all the child styles. So the same feature exists here in Affinity Publisher, and because we preserved all those styles, we can use it. So let's say that we wanted to switch from Montserrat, which is currently used, to a different font. I'll scroll down to find the parent style that all the styles in this document are based on, which is this one here called main font. Now, main font isn't actually applied to any text on the document pages here, but it just exists to be that parent style. I'm going to edit it. And in the character controls, I'm going to change the font family. And I do have to be a little bit careful as I choose a different font here to make sure that whichever font I choose has all the same different styles. So it needs to support bold, italic, you know, extra bold, black, whatever was applied in the document. As I move my cursor over each different font, you can see the text formatting changes throughout the document. I mean, this is just an incredibly powerful, incredibly cool feature if you need to make this kind of change. For this one in particular, I know that Open Sans has all the styles that I need, so I'm just going to go ahead and choose that and click OK. So now I've updated the colors, I've updated the text formatting. Let's see what else we can do. On this spread, I want to make changes to our graph and our table. And I'm going to get out of preview mode just so I can see my column guides here while I work on the pie chart. So we'll get rid of the old one. And Publisher has a perfect tool for making pie charts. Not surprisingly, it's called the pie tool. So you can choose it over here from the tools. And I'm going to click and drag to create a new pie. Hold down the Shift key to constrain it, like so. And to change the start and end angle of this pie segment, I can either use the controls up here in the context toolbar, or I can simply move my cursor over these endpoints, and whenever I see a bent arrow, I can click and drag to change that angle. Oops. Let's do it like this. So I'll drag it down about there, and we'll drag this, say this was the new data that we needed. So that's one piece of the pie. Then I'll copy it and paste it. I'll change the fill color, use one of our other global swatches, and let's drag this guy here. We'll say that this reflected the new data for the new year. Copy and paste again, and I'll apply one of my other swatches for this last pie wedge. Love how they snap together. Just like that. And we could, of course, update the numbers and the bar charts as well. Now let's move on to the table over here. So the table is interesting. InDesign and Publisher work a little bit differently when it comes to tables. In InDesign, a table has to live inside of a text frame. It doesn't have to in Publisher. It can just be an independent object. And so that can lead to a little bit of confusion when you first convert over. So for example, if I click on this guy and I just try to start dragging to move him so I can make an extra row down here, I can't do it. And the reason I can see in the Layers panel is because I actually have the table selected. If I want to move it, I need to select the text frame that came over from InDesign. Okay, or if I don't actually need this inline in the text frame anymore, I can select the table itself and just click the button so it's no longer inline. And now I have two separate things. I have the table itself and I have the text frame that came over from InDesign. I'll just get rid of that and move this down here. And now I can take the table tool and let's say I'll add a row. So we'll go up to 10 rows. We'll click in here and we can just start typing in to add some new data. So on and so forth to update our table. All right, that's looking pretty good. And now on the last page, let's update this date, 21. And I want to add that hyperlink to this text down here. So I'm going to zoom in and select this text, copy it, and then I'll open the Hyperlinks panel by View, Studio, Hyperlinks, and I want to create a new hyperlink. The type is going to be a URL, but we can make other types of hyperlinks as well. And I'll just type in the start, paste in that text that I copied, and I don't want to apply any extra character formatting, so I'm going to just set it to no style and click OK. And now I have a live hyperlink to our fictional website. So that's cool. Let's zoom back out. And one more thing I'd like to do is update that table of contents. So remember, this is just static information now. I want this to be dynamic, so when the headings in the document or the page numbering changes, that this can be updated very quickly and easily. The way I can do that is I'll select it all and delete it. And I'll open the table of contents panel right here and create a new table of contents. Now, just like in Adobe InDesign, the table of contents feature here in Publisher is based on the usage of text styles. So I can see on the left-hand side all the styles that have been applied to the text in the document. So now I just need to tell Publisher which styles I want it to gather text from and put into this frame in the TOC. And that's going to be my H1 headings. So I'll find them. H1 main, and now it's gathered all the H1s and put them in here. The next thing I need to do is format them so they look correctly. For that, I'll go to the text styles panel, and you can see the styles that it's created on the fly. I no longer see all the list of styles throughout the document. This is just the table of contents styles here. And I want to edit this one, H1 main. And now we're going to use that based on feature again. So instead of being based on TOC1 entry, I want to base this on my main font paragraph style, just like everything else in the document. So I'll do that, apply it to the selection, and I come pretty close to how I want my TOC to look. I just want to make it capitals and click OK. And that looks pretty good. The one thing I think that's missing right now are the dotted leaders that we had in the InDesign layout. And for that, I need to add another separator character, because I actually need two tabs to do that. One to set the end of the dotted leader around here, and another to get that page number in. So to add a second separator, I'll go over to the table of contents panel here, the separator controls, and I'll add a tab. And then using the text frame ruler, which you can open and close from right here, I'll just click in here and add a tab. Then I'm going to right click on that tab, change it to right alignment, and add the dotted leader. And see how that looks. That looks pretty good. So now I just need to update the paragraph style so that all of my TOC entries are using that same tab set with the dotted leader. So we'll just say update, and there we go. And then just to prove that this really is a dynamic table of contents, let's scroll down a bit, find one of our cool headings, like the message from the CEO. Let's say that this year the CEO wants to be more personal, and this time it's message from Brad. So we've updated the H1 main. Now let's go back to our table of contents. Select it and we'll update it. And now we can see it says message from Brad. So that looks pretty good. We're just about ready to output the PDF file, but before we do that, I want to take advantage of another feature of Affinity Publisher that I love, which is the Preflight feature. So this allows you to check for certain problems in the document and fix them before you export to PDF. So I'll open the Preflighting by choosing View Studio, Preflight, and I can choose a profile which tells Publisher which things I want it to check for. I'm just gonna start with the default and click Check Now. And it finds a whole bunch of errors, but fortunately most of these are not real errors. They're just all spelling mistakes because I used dummy text in this file. So we can tell Publisher we don't want it to check for spelling or certain other things just by going to this menu here and choosing Edit Profile. And here's all the categories of things that Publisher can check for during Preflight. I can go to Spelling and disable it and rerun the check. And now I just have a few errors that are all these bleed hazard things. So what's going on with those? What's happening there is in the original version of this annual report, the print service provider didn't want there to be a bleed on the inside edge of the pages. They only wanted it on the top, bottom, and outside. But right now in this document, the bleed extends on all four sides. So Publisher's checking all four sides and it's finding that there's no bleed on the inside and saying for elements like this photo, that's going to be a problem. So what we can do is just change the bleed settings here. So with nothing selected, I'll go to Document Setup. I'll go to Bleed Settings, turn off the constraining and set the inner bleed to 0. I'll click OK and rerun the Preflight. And now we're down to just one mistake. So again, it's a bleed hazard. I'm going to double click on it to navigate to the problem and select it. Sure enough, it's Brad. It's our CEO. And it's probably hard to see, but what's happening here is that Brad's photo doesn't go down far enough. It doesn't go all the way down to the bleed guide. It's too close to the trim edge of the page. So we're just going to nudge him down a little bit, like so. Rerun the check, and no errors. All right, so now I think we're ready to export a PDF. So I'll choose File, Export. Here's all the different formats you can export from Publisher. Right in the middle is PDF. So we'll choose PDF for print as our preset. We can customize this by clicking the More button and going in here and tweaking any of these settings. In this case, I want to turn on that bleed. This is also where you would go to make sure you had live hyperlinks if you were just producing a PDF for on-screen consumption. I'll click Close. I want to make sure that I'm exporting pages, not spreads, and export. I'll save it to the desktop. And it's done. Let's switch over to Preview. And we'll open it and see what we got. So we'll view 2 pages so we can see our spreads. There's our nice cover. There's our nice facing pages spread with our dynamic table, recurring elements and page numbers, our nice blue color. Looking good here. There's Brad without his facial hair. Our updated chart, our updated table, and our live hyperlink to our fictional website. So that looks really good. And you can see I was able to make a lot of those changes very quickly and with a minimum of hassle by opening the IDML file in Publisher. So before we go, I just want to summarize some of the things that we went through here. So we talked about moving a project from Adobe InDesign into Affinity Publisher. We saw how you can actually open a PDF file directly with Publisher and get at all those page elements and make edits to them, which is really great. It's something InDesign cannot do, and it can really help you if you just need to make a few targeted changes and output a new version very quickly. But a lot of things aren't preserved in a PDF file that you need to work with if you need to make large wholesale changes throughout the document. If that's the case, then you really want to try to work with an IDML file. That's great if you can just export it out from InDesign, but if you don't have access to InDesign, you can use a tool like ID Marks from marksware.com to get at that content and bring it into Publisher really easily. And you get basically everything. You get all the text styles, paragraph and character styles, you get your master pages, margins and columns, your linked images are preserved, your tables are preserved, and of course the swatches as well. So that's really cool. We also looked at the Studio Link feature and how you can use tools from Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo right in the context of your page layout, which is just absolutely awesome, so cool. We used the Preflight feature to head off problems before we exported to PDF, and then we just smoothly exported to PDF and checked out our result, and it looked pretty darn good. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you learned some cool stuff that you can do with Affinity Publisher. I want to say thanks again to the folks at Serif for having me be part of the Lockdown 2020 event. Everyone, stay safe, be well, and take care. Bye-bye.